Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader with my comic book thoughts for the week. There were a number of comics that were super fun for me this week, and I really enjoyed them. Some, I think I got 11 comic books, and 3 of them were kind of and well, I'll start with those just quickly. Uh, I got The Wicked and Divine, even though I told myself I wouldn't. I was just craving more indie stuff lately. Um, And as far as that goes, I guess it kind of fit the bill of something a little different. I still I still feel like I'm kind of in this stuff. It feels like you're supposed to think it's cool, but it doesn't seem that cool to me. But there's some cool moments and some interesting graphical moments, and it certainly isn't mainstream, although it feels very teenagery, I guess. Um, so anyway, I might, even though I didn't love it, I might keep getting it just because it's different. Kind of the same, Forever People uh, just did not engage script-wise. I'm just not finding myself caring about what's going on. Although I did love, I assume this is just a one-time guest appearance by Jim Starlin on this book. I loved his art here. Um, he definitely has not lost his touch art-wise. He's not writing the script on here. I'd love to see him maybe like co-writing with some really out there new writer or something like Brendan Graham or something like that. See what Jim Starlin and Brendan Graham could do together. But anyway, I'm going to keep picking up Forever People. I'm generally not a completist, but I sort of feel like a completist on Jack Kirby, directly related DC Jack Kirby stuff. And finally, in my kind of meh pile was Batman Eternal. It was just kind of a weak issue, and it was a little disappointing to have a weak issue on an issue that was kind of wrapping up a bunch of storylines. So it left me feeling a little down on Batman Eternal. But I'm sure next week it'll be a really good one again or something, and I'll change my mind. So on to the great stuff. I was expecting Little Nemo to be good, but it was maybe my favorite comic book of the week. Eric Shanauer, who's done a lot of Wizard of Oz comics, written a lot of Wizard of Oz comics and drawn some of them, has a great touch with these whimsical children's-based fantasy stories. And Gabriel Rodriguez, I didn't realize what a fantastic artist he is. But it's just an incredible ride. Now, of course, he has a famous original comic strip to build upon, famous for its surrealism and its dream sequences. You don't have to know anything about the original comic. I've gotten copies of it out of the library every now and then. It's very hard to read with tiny little print, and it seems to just be sort of one-page surrealism gags with, at the end of every page, little Nemo waking up at the bottom of the page, falling out of his bed. So they recreate that, but they give it much more of a story and character. Although maybe I should go back to the original Nemo and read it more closely, and maybe there's more to it than I thought, beyond the incredible graphics. So anyway, if you're not stuck to certain genres and you're willing to be flexible and go into the children's genre, I think this series is looking to be like a really, really great comic. Fun for children and adults to really savor. And it's I have yet to read this part. Maybe it gives me maybe give you some history on the original Little Nemo in Slumberland, and then it also gives you samples of the penciled pages and the script. So, it's lots of bonuses in here for a $3.99 book. But as one of the best comic books out there, I don't mind paying $3.99 for it anyway. So kind of a very close second was The Fade Out by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. A very satisfying, if a touch sort of cliched noir Hollywood murder mystery kind of story, but with just done so well and with a lot of little unique touches that add something to the genre. So I'm really looking forward to more of this. I was really enjoyed this issue. Something you can reread and re-savor the art. So yeah, it was really great. There were some books I wanted to buy this week that were already sold out in my store, and that led me to pick up something I had planned to trade weight on because I just wanted more comics, and that was Multiversity. And to my surprise, I really enjoyed this a lot, and I enjoyed it in a way that I wasn't really expecting. Because it was Grant Morrison, I was thinking in terms of, trippy, self-reflexive postmodernism. But what really triggered my joy buzzer on this was a big sprawling book with lots of superheroes. The kind of thing that attracted me to superheroes when I was a little kid. When I would buy the Avengers and other comics that had large numbers of superheroes on the cover and packed on every page, and just like the thrill of picking up the Legion of Superheroes when you were a kid, or the thrill of the things where the Justice League meets the Justice Society and all of that, just to get a lot of superheroes. And Grant Morrison takes that childlike joy of that and just does it so smoothly and in such a, even though there's not really a whole lot of character and there's really not a whole lot of depth to the plot so far, maybe it'll become deep later, there's a smoothness, a way he introduces all the different characters and all the different worlds that's just fun. It's fun to read. And it kind of reminds me of sort of the lighter Alan Moore, like the way I enjoyed his Tom Strong, that was just filled with all the wacky pulp ideas that he could come up with and stick in an issue. And this is just filled with all the wacky superhero ideas that he can come up with. The whole thing is very self-referential. It is fun that to me, it's really about the fun of superhero comics at this point. So it's fun that in the comic books in one reality are actually about the superheroes in another reality. And when we see them get into a ship and travel between worlds, they're kind of traveling between comic book pages or between comic book panels with weird monsters in between. And the space between the worlds is called the bleed. And I think they use the same term in The Authority, and I never thought about this before, but a term of printing comics is the bleed, where the edge of the page is the bleed. And when printing technology allows you to print out through the bleed out to the edge of the page. So when they travel through the bleed from one comic book universe to another, they're literally traveling outside the panels to the next page, I guess, or to the next comic book. And taken as a joyful 11-year-old trip through superhero land, it's really fun, rather than taken as some kind of deep statement about comics, which it may or may not be, but it's not what attracts me. So I guess I'm probably on this for buying in the floppies rather than in a trade later. And if every issue's as fun as this one, I may end up buying a trade of it afterwards too and double dipping. So I guess I'm back feeling pro Grant Morrison, which I've been kind of down on him for quite a while. Not personally, of course. Just less excited by books by him. Let's see. Here's some others that I enjoyed, maybe not as high a level. I was not surprised by them or anything. I expected to enjoy them, and I did. Future's End continues to be this incredibly tight, classic sort of superhero story with science fiction twists in it. And unlike Batman Eternal, it continues to remain consistent. There's some really cool stuff in this issue near the end. The best story thread remains the Frankenstein story thread, and we get a great revelation at the end of this issue of where Frankenstein and the gang have ended up, which is very interesting. There's some interesting Superman stuff, interesting. What did I want to say? I like the Superman sequence. Interesting Lois Lane and Superman kind of connecting again. I'm struggling with this character 50 Sue, and how much power does she have, and how come she does what Cadmus wants if she has that much power? How does Cadmus keep her controlled? They do introduce what seems to be a new story thread, which seems like kind of a mistake. This character called Storm Guard. I'm not sure what they're up to here. It doesn't seem very useful to the rest of it. But this series has been so strong so far, I'm willing to give it a chance and see where they go with Storm Guard. He seems like a bad Wildstorm character to me on the surface of it. I'm really interested to see what's happening on Cadmus Island with all the Earth 2 characters and everything. The downside of all of this is it's all about how Earth 2 is gone and all the Earth 2 refugees are on Earth, and they had a war over it, I guess. And not only does it feel like it's spoiling already what's going to happen in Earth 2 and in World's End Earth 2, it depresses me because I like Earth 2 so much. I just want that Earth 2 comic book to continue and have its own continuity and not worry about the rest of the DC universe. Another very good issue of Trees, which is just focused on characters, and characters with the backdrop of the science fictional thing that has happened to Earth, with these giant tree-like structures popping up. So I'm really enjoying it. There's not a lot to say about it. It's not plot-driven at the moment. It's character-driven, although it feels like there's the plot hiding in the background, the science fictional situation. And it has fantastic art and color by one guy, Jason Howard. That is really enjoyable. So yeah, the Trees is kind of a classic slow burn science fiction. Not something you really see in comic books, but something that might feel familiar from, science fiction from the 70s on, perhaps. Not the golden age kind of science fiction, but more modern science fiction. And by science fiction, I mean science fiction novels and short stories, not movies or TV shows or comics. So I've always liked that I can sense that Warren Ellis knows his science fiction. He has a literary science fiction side to him hidden away somewhere. And speaking of literature, Umbral is still it's a comic book, but it's very much connected to, I guess, what you might call high fantasy. Stuff that started with Lord of the Rings and has, exploded in the world of novels, with the Clash of Kings, the Game of Thrones being the most popular current example. This is a much smaller story than Game of Thrones. It still focuses on a small group of people. Every issue when I pick it up, I'm a little confused at the beginning. The art doesn't help me identify characters that well, and I just don't remember everything. So I would highly recommend this as something to read in trades if you like that kind of immersive fantasy world with a lot of world building and stuff. And with great art, but just art that makes it a little hard to read in the individual floppies, or the combination of whatever the writer and the artist is doing. But by the end of this issue, and this has been happening issue after issue, the beginning of the issue I feel, well, maybe I should drop this. I'm a little confused, having trouble remembering all of this stuff. By the end of the issue, I'm really enjoying it, and I want to get the next issue. So I'm staying on it as a monthly. And last but not least, another just really good, strong issue of Ms. Marvel, following up on everything that's already happened in the first 6 issues before it. Great sense of humor, great characters, makes Wolverine enjoyable, more enjoyable than he's been in quite a while for me, and keeps working through her development as a hero and exploring her powers and everything. Just a really satisfying issue. An issue that's maybe more focused on action than some of the other issues, but completely deserved because we've been building up to this action throughout. And then with an interesting coda of a character from the Inhumans who seems like will be added to the regular continuity of Ms. Marvel. And I'm looking forward to see how they'll handle that. So yeah, an overall very satisfying week of comics for me. It's funny because on the comic book roundtable, I don't think during the roundtable, I don't know if it was during on air or before, talking about how if you just walk into a comic book store and buy a few comic books, you might not realize what great comic books are out there. You know, you might buy 1 or 2 that are duds and think, well, that's the current state of comics. If you bought a different set of comic books, you might say, wow, comics are really exciting right now. And maybe part of how I keep my excitement up over comics is that I do buy a lot of comic books, and most often a good chunk of them are really good. And I do bounce around if I'm not happy with things. But I seem to be more and more happy with a lot of indie comics. And yeah, so I'm keep looking for more indie comics to jump on. I may jump on to Stray Bullets soon. So I hope everyone out there is doing well, and I'll talk to y'all later.